Hey, friendos, what's going on? Once again, it's time to listen to your conspiracy theories from the world of pro wrestling, WWE, whatever. I've got the lighting going on. I got the conspiracy beanie going on, which you can get right now at friendoshop.com. So we're going to go ahead and dive into your conspiracy theories. Let's go ahead and start off with this one. Cole says Triple H is purposely and spitefully sabotaging John Cena's retirement run. So, if this was the year 2005, I would totally agree with this. If this was Triple H pulling his old power play political backstage machinations backstage, I would totally agree with this. My cat wants to leave now. But this is the year 2025. This is 20 years after those days, and Triple H has a new position. It's like officially guy who's in charge of creative. And in order to maintain that, in order to get those big paychecks, he's got to do what's best for the company, creatively speaking. I don't think that Triple H, I think that this is the sad thing. It's probably more believable that he is purposely trying to sabotage John Cena's run, as opposed to believing that there are moments in this run that have felt very ineptly executed, ineptly conceived, for example. And I know I keep on going back to this, sound like a broken record. When John Cena turned face again, it was a very, very limp way to go from being a bad guy to being a good guy. That being said, the heel turn was really good. I don't think for a second that Triple H would be so sort of narrow-minded in his pursuit to sabotage John Cena's retirement run that he would do something like they did in the main event of WrestleMania 2, which he had to have known once Rock wasn't going to be available, that was going to get shit on. Travis Scott showing up, the way he did, the way that was executed, and then there was like no hint of The Rock. He had to have known that that was going to get shit on. That wasn't going to be good. And here's the thing. He's the guy now. He's the guy there running things. And so he's got to know that it only hurts his own legacy when things like that happen. So if this was back in the day and this was like a backstage politics thing, absolutely 1,000%. But he's the guy taking the heat when things get a bad reaction. So, at the end of the day, he's getting this big farewell thing and doing it John Cena the way he wants to do it, apparently. So I don't think this conspiracy theory is true. I think in a weird way, I think Triple H would understand that in order for him to look good, in order for Triple H to look good, he has to, like John Cena's retirement run has to be a success, because then Triple H will get the accolades. When things go well on screen, he gets the credit for it. So, I feel like if what he wants is personal, financial, professional accolades, then he's got to make sure things are good, not just sort of like ruining the legacy of people who he might have wanted to ruin their legacy 20 years ago. Maybe. I don't know. That's what I think about that particular one. Next up, we've got Alexander Ball says WWE cut the legs out from Zack Ryder as punishment for getting over on his own via his personal social media. And that's why they won't bring him back now. I think there's two things here. Number one, kind of the first thing I think is true. I think there was a weird resentment that Vince McMahon would have. And also to a degree, I think Triple H. I don't think Triple H likes Zack Ryder. And I think that Zack Ryder overperforming because of social media and Vince McMahon not understanding why he was getting over, what he wanted to do with the character, and that it wasn't Vince behind that push, that getting over, the popularity. I think those are the reasons why they basically went out of their way to humiliate the character of Zack Ryder and completely bury him. I believe that. As far as why they won't bring him back now, I kind of feel like it's a matter of Triple H just not knowing what to do with him. I think it's kind of not that different from why Bobby Lashley was getting really good crowd reactions, but Triple H, for whatever reason, just didn't know what to do with him and was like, I don't know. He's a monster who the crowd really likes, but I want him to be a bad guy and they're not doing what I want them to do. And therefore I don't really know what to do with him creatively. That seemed to be the case with Bobby Lashley. I don't get it, to be honest with you. But in any event, it's sort of the same thing. I honestly feel like sometimes when people really don't know what to do with somebody, then they just, they're like, yeah, I'm not going to bring him in. They brought him in for the NXT thing. They brought him in for the Cena thing. And yeah, I'm kind of not surprised that was it for him, because the Matt Cardona thing works really, really well in the indies because it's a subversion of the WWE gimmick. And that's how it started out. And that's how it sort of is now. But then how do you subvert something when you're in that thing? And I kind of get why they wouldn't understand what to do with that, because I wouldn't understand what to do with that. But let's see here. What else we got? Jesse Iwiak. Jesse Iwiak. While his back was initially severely injured, the actual reason for Shawn Michaels being gone until 2002 was he was too pilled up, even for late 90s / early 2000s WWF, as opposed to actually being physically unable to wrestle. So this one is interesting because it's like, why was he gone for so long? I've always liked the theory that the conspiracy theory, if you will, or the real reason, if you will, that he was gone because he felt the Attitude Era might be passing him up. He saw the horizon that, like, oh man, the Clique are not going to be the ones in Vince's ear, because you got guys like Stone Cold and you got guys like The Rock who clearly were going to be super popular, and with popularity comes leverage. With leverage comes the ability to politic backstage. And maybe he felt that. But here's my counter to that. DX was really popular. And I feel like at the time, Shawn Michaels, his popularity was kind of at an all-time high because of DX. Kids all over the country were walking down, hallways, cross-chopping teachers. And he was a part of that. He was the thing doing that. Obviously, Triple H and his guys took over afterwards. But I feel like if there was any time to capitalize off of all the work that he had already put in, getting to that point, if he could have, Shawn Michaels would have continued on. That being said, I don't think the actual back injury took him out for 4 years, because 2 years after that WrestleMania match with Stone Cold Steve Austin, he was back in his own promotion, TVA, Total something in Texas Wrestling Alliance. Is that what it was? I don't know what it was. Anyways, he wrestled a guy named Venom for the title for that particular promotion. I think it was a promotion that Shawn Michaels owned. And he wrestled like a 18-minute match. You can see it on YouTube. It's there. And he looks great. He looks fine. So at the very least, he could have only been out for 2 years. I think it's generally known, and I think he's talked about this before, that and on top of that, he was always popping up on WWE doing all sorts of stuff, from guest reffing to general managing, stuff like that, to commissionering. But I kind of feel like, yeah, he just sort of had he was in his own head. And I think eventually that sort of cleared and he was able to come back to work. I really don't think it had as much to do with the skyrocketing popularity of people that weren't him. Because I do think that if his back, I think the back was probably the initial thing. I think the back was a thing, totally a thing, because everybody has spoke about, that match wasn't really a great match, but you could see the guy was in super pain. You can actually go see the spot in the casket match where he fucked up his back. And, that kind of stuff takes its toll. The guy was working in 97. I think he worked, I want to say, cause I looked this up just before I was rolling. In 96, he worked like 175 matches or something. It was ridiculous. It was a really, really big amount. It was like every other day he was wrestling. 97, that dialed back quite a bit. And the 98, I think he only literally wrestled 2 matches, the Rumble one and the Mania one. And so he had dialed back a lot by 97, but in 96, 95, this guy was going. And he had been going for a while at that point. And so you got to think at some point that's going to catch up with you. But it does seem like he was able to wrestle like 2 years later. But I think he's even talked about how, the pilled up situation, as you so callously refer to it, was probably enough to keep him from the full-time WWF thing until his return in 2002. So yeah, I feel like to a degree you're probably right here, but I think he's also sort of talked about this. So this is less a conspiracy theory. I think he's been kind of open about the idea that the back wasn't everything during that period of time he took off. I feel like the back was probably significant, but probably could have come back a year. I think like a year later, maybe 2 years later. I know there was like talk about him coming back at Mania 17, which was a year before he did. I think 17 was 2001, and then 18 was 2002. That sounds right. But he was back by what? SummerSlam 2002. So 4 years and change, but man, seems like he really kind of needed that break because he had been going for a while there. Pat says John Cena doesn't have kids because of his experience with Make-A-Wish, and he doesn't want his children to experience that pain. That is wildly personal and really sad and dark for a stupid, silly conspiracy theory video. That being said, it wouldn't surprise me. Having kids of my own, and having, I met, this is like my favorite going in Raw story of all time. My favorite professional story, because somebody asked, what's your professional highlight? And now that I think about it, it might be this. So I'll turn this conspiracy theory into a fun story here. Years ago, back at WrestleMania 33, so 2017, Larson and I went to the what do they call it? Fan access, the big experience, the big WWE shop that they do locally every year. I don't know if they still do it. I think they do. And we go, we're in the actual shop area of that, and we're walking around, and this lady comes up. No. This kid comes up to us, and he says, "Hey, you're Steven Larson. I'm a big fan. I love your show. I love everything you guys have done. And I'm so kind of starstruck right now." We're like, "Hey, that's awesome, man. That's good to meet you. That's really cool." He goes, and then his mom comes up to us and says, "I just want to let you guys know, my son is a Make-A-Wish kid. And the WWE had him come out and meet all the wrestlers, and they did like a lunch with them. But he just seemed more excited to meet you guys than he did the wrestlers." And I tell you, I have never been so floored or emotionally taken aback by a moment than that. I was not expecting that at all. It was very humbling. It was like complete validation for everything that we had done. And Larson, who notoriously at the time did not too sweet anybody, any fan that would come up to him or anything like that. This kid was in on the joke, and he came up to us and said, when he said what he said, he gave me a too sweet, and he gave Larson a handshake. He said, "Because I know you don't too sweet, Larson." And so Larson went back to the kid after his mom told us that, went back over to the kid and snuck him a too sweet. And I caught it out of the corner of my eye, and I was like, ugh. And so just recently, like maybe a year ago, less than a year ago, we were sitting there in one of our live watch-alongs, and I had I was openly musing about that particular story. And the kid who had talked to us way back then piped up in the chat and was able to confirm other details of the story so that it wasn't just some rando making it up. It was the actual kid, and he had lived past whatever ailment he was dealing with at the time. So he's still with us. And I was like, oh, that's so amazing. I'm so happy that kid ended up surviving whatever he was going through at the time. So that's my little story about Make-A-Wish, is that we had an impromptu Make-A-Wish moment. And then the kid ended up living. So that was nice. Anyways, let's go ahead and continue on with the silliness of pro wrestling. What the fuck happened here? Here we go. More Cena. Paul Evans says Cena's injury and return at the Royal Rumble was a semi-work. He was injured, but nowhere near as badly as WWE told us. I think, yeah, the second part is probably true. Although Cena has been known to be a little bit of a athletic, physical freak and has been able to do that. That's like the most well-known of like him being able to come back early. And that was a hell of a moment, hell of a surprise. Wouldn't shock me if they kind of fibbed on that one a little bit, if they fabed us a little bit on his actual injury. But that's just good promotions, I think. That's just like, hey, see, he's ready, he's come back. Okay. Hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and do this. So yeah, that's a possibility. Maybe they fibbed on his injury a little bit. Bubba says, y'all just talked about it, but hearing that Rick Rude allegedly beat the shit out of Warrior is so fucking funny. Yeah, Larson and I did some video about something. I forget what. But yeah, Rick, I think it was a count out. Wrestlers who were scary to work with. That's what it was over at Going in Raw. And so there was like a rumor for ages, or a story, that the Warrior, and apparently this was then verified by multiple people, that Warrior at one point in passing said to Rick Rude, yeah, you're never going to get a push because you're not world championship material. And then Rick Rude beat the shit out of him. And I love that story so much. It is a great story, but it is not a conspiracy theory. Apparently that shit really happened. Yeetus Deletus says, I actually have a new one that started very recently. WWE is trying to get closer and closer to going back to the Divas division, or the Divas era. They obviously won't revert all the way back, but I've noticed a weird trend for the past few weeks. He goes on to mention things like Jade Cargill in squash matches, Maxine Dupree, who has kind of a Divas presentation, winning the IC title, Nikki Bella getting the title shot against Stephanie Vaquer. I don't necessarily think it's going to go back to the Divas era, because that was a very specific thing. And even when you look at Maxine Dupree, they're trying to flesh out her character by doing the whole workout thing with Natty, which what seems to be Bloodsport Natty. So it seems like they're actually trying to de-diva or undiva Maxine Dupree. As far as Jade Cargill, I kind of see more of a Goldberg analogy there, as far instead of like a Divas analogy there. And they're still allowing the women to put on really good, really long matches. They're kind of focusing right now on the women's tag team division, where they're just really loading that up and giving the women something to do there. On top of that, Stephanie Vaquer, yes, there are elements of her that are, overly sexualized, if you will. Her big move that she does, the Devil's Kiss, is wildly over. But it doesn't come at the cost of like her dignity, and it doesn't come at the cost of the actual wrestling involved in the match. That is not the focus. That is, if you will, the cherry on top. So I don't see them going back to the Divas era. That being said, they've never been shy about sexualizing or playing up the sexuality, I should say, of the wrestlers, even in the modern day. But I think that a little bit of variety is probably more what they're going for. I would be shocked if they went back to sort of what they were doing in the Divas era, where that was very, 2-minute matches, Playboy matches, the pillow fight matches, that kind of shit. I don't think they're going to go back to that anytime soon. I'd be really shocked if they did. I don't think that'd be good for business. Fukujin Belt says, my dad told me in 2017 that Triple H is more than likely a member of the Knights Templar. Like the Freemasons? I think my grandpa was one of those. I think he was a Freemason with the little hats, the little fez hats. He had like a full-on Freemason funeral when he passed back in 09, 06, something like that, what it was. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Is this like an Illuminati thing? What is, like, I need more info on this. Like, I mean, clearly the guy has, like, he loves the Iron Cross iconography, which can be something completely different, which I'm not going to speak on right now. Hitmando says, my conspiracy is WWE don't treat their product as 52 weeks a year, but take a break from May to January. They do sort of run on fumes by the time we get to War Games, don't they? Yeah, I kind of wonder. They got to ramp things up for Survivor Series. I'm sorry, for SummerSlam and Money in the Bank, but otherwise, they don't really bring their A game until WrestleMania season, do they? Which is kind of wild to me. But building to WrestleMania is when they really start to bring it. And then to a degree, they kind of just stumble through the rest of the year. I don't know if that's on purpose or not. I don't think that's on purpose, because if they were able to bring their A game the entire time, you would think that would just generate more revenue. Yeah. I just think that booking at 52 weeks a year is just hard. That's always been, that's my main conspiracy theory, is that booking compelling television 52 weeks is just really hard. It's kind of unprecedented and nobody can keep it going for very long. And that's why there are peaks and valleys in wrestling creative. If you think about it, like the various eras of pro wrestling, I've talked about this before, but like, you know, the Attitude Era, what did that last? 3 years? Maybe 4? You know, so boom periods are never going to last very long. Oh man, look at this one. Apollo Does It says, this is a really crazy one and a really old one that my mom told me. So good chances it's not true. She alleged that Hulk Hogan and Macho Man had a secret sexual relationship. Her reasons for this: one of Hogan's ex-wives put it out to some shady, shitty tabloid. The suspicious part about it is WWE did come down with a gag order of some kind and shut her up. Suspicious? Not really, lol. It more than likely didn't happen, but the idea of Macho Man and Hulk Hogan being intimate with each other is hilarious. So, like, I generally stay away from the haha, they're gay thing that we really kind of recently saw with Bret Hart, because I don't think it's funny. It's kind of tacky and, in a way, homophobic. That being said, sex in general is pretty funny. When you have the awkwardness of two naked people, you know, bumping meat, it's funny, straight, gay, whatever. It's all hilarious, or it can be anyways. The idea of two wildly out-of-pocket personalities, two hilarious personalities like the Macho Man and Hulk Hogan being intimate with each other is objectively hilarious. It just is, you know. Oh, yeah. Sex can be hilarious, people, regardless of who's having it. And so the idea of these two guys, I mean, it could explain some things, you know, the hot and cold nature of their relationship. I don't know what these guys do in their private lives. I really don't. But yeah, you know, the idea here, and I love that this was put out there by your mom, that she somehow caught wind of an ex-wife getting things to a tabloid. I'm not even going to look this one up. I probably should for the purpose of this. But yeah, the idea of the mega powers, you know, doing that is actually pretty funny just for the sounds alone. Oh yeah, brother. Oh, hey, Hulk Hogan. You want to touch my butt? Napalm says, here's my conspiracy theory. Triple H orchestrated Cena's awful heel turn, knowing Rock wouldn't show up at WrestleMania, to ruin his reputation among the fans. To ruin Rock's Rock's reputation among the fans? That one is semi-believable. If we're talking about Triple H trying to poison the well with the fans and The Rock, that is actually quite believable. In that situation, I could see that potentially coming. Here's the thing. You have to look at this through the lens. That's why the first one I addressed, like ruining the entire retirement run to sully Cena's legacy, I don't buy that. But this one moment to sort of stick it to The Rock and solidify his own position in that role as head of creative, I think that is a calculated political decision that is a possibility, because he always knows he can salvage the rest of the run. If Triple H does this, completely bombs the Night 2 Mania main event, knowing that he can put blame on The Rock, because everybody's going to be like, where was The Rock? Why was The Rock not there? The Rock really stuck it to WWE, didn't they? Or didn't he? Then the blame comes off Triple H onto The Rock. He's out. Triple H stays in, solidifying his position. And then he can then go on and try and, he's got basically 8 months then to try to salvage the Cena run, which, I mean, he kind of has. There's been some really good matches. There's been some good promos. They're doing this tournament thing. We're coming up on about 10 days away. We're 9 days away from the final match. And I think it's, I don't think it's as bad as it was like during the summertime. So this one, I would say, is absolutely possible. And on that note, we're going to call it a day. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. I'm going to turn on some lights in here because the red light situation is just, it's bugging the rods and cones, man. Anyways, we'll see you guys around. Be sure to go over to mfshophere.com if you want to check out some of my comic books, you can over there. Till next time, we'll see you guys around.